This is a land snail. You can tell because it's on land. Right now, it's warm and sunny, but soon the season will change. Land snails don't really like cold weather. When faced with freezing temperatures, these invertebrates find a cozy spot to sleep and tuck into their shell until spring. But some snails don't mind the cold. This is a glass snail. It's a type of land snail, but it doesn't hibernate in winter. Instead, this cold-loving gastropod uses cooler climates to its advantage. As another land snail sleeps, unconscious to its surroundings, a glass snail sneaks in. Even if the land snail wakes up, it will be too sluggish in the chilly temperature to put up a fight. For the glass snail, it's an easy meal. It's a snail-eat-snail world out there, especially in winter. But don't worry, there's more to the glass snail than its ruthless hunting strategy. It's not even a true glass snail. It's barely a snail at all. Glass snails as a whole get their name from their translucent shell. There isn't a definitive group of glass snails. It's more of a feature found in many snail groups rather than an identifying characteristic of a single group. There is one family of snails known as the true glass snails, but the snail family in this video is a different family entirely. They're fakes. Vitrinidae, the fake glass snails. Although that's sort of a bogus common name, so let's go with vitrinous glass snails. It'll be important later anyway. Vitrinous glass snails, who will be referred to simply as glass snails for the remainder of this video, are tiny. Some of the most well-known species only reach about 5 millimeters long. The biggest species top out at about 4 times this. Just absolutely annihilating the scales out here. They're typically gray to brown in color with a yellow-tinged shell. That is, if they have a shell at all. Glass snails are snails in name, but not always in looks. There's typically a distinction between snails and slugs by the presence of an external shell. Shell equals snail. No shell equals slug. But sometimes there are gastropods with a smaller shell that's partially covered up. When this happens, they're referred to as semi-slugs. It's likely they aren't known as semi-snails because semi-slugs are unable to retract into their shell. It's just too small. If the defining feature of a snail is its ability to curl up inside its shell for protection, and these smaller shelled invertebrates can't do that, it makes sense they got the slug name instead. Anyway, the glass snail family displays examples of snails with full shells and semi-slugs with nearly no shell at all. So the process of snails developing over time to lose their shell is named after them: vitrinization. At least according to the living world of mollusks. Most other sources just reference back to that single statement. The glass snail family name could also be in reference to the process known as vitrification, in which a substance is heated and turned into glass. That doesn't feel like a coincidence. So now that we know that glass snails are fakes, and barely snails at all, it feels worthwhile to mention that they aren't actually made of glass. We're going to overlook all these glaring shortcomings, however, and just enjoy these invertebrates for how cool they are. That was a pun, because glass snails like cold weather. Yes, they do sometimes sneak into the homes of sleeping snails and consume their flesh, but this isn't always how glass snails operate. Think of this as more of an opportunistic strategy as opposed to seeking out violent acts against their own kind. Glass snails mostly eat dead things. Dead earthworms, dead mushrooms, dead plants, and also dung, which I suppose is also technically dead. They just happen to be the most active when a lot of other animals are inactive or in the process of dying. A lot of invertebrates die off in the winter, leaving their bodies behind for glass snails to find. But then the process reverses come summer when glass snails succumb to warmer weather. Warm weather isn't all that threatens the life of a glass snail. Larger animals will happily take the chance at an easy meal, with one prominent example being hedgehogs. Even glass snail species that have a shell to retreat into aren't all that safe. It's not called glass for the transparency alone. Provide just a bit of pressure and the glass snail's shell cracks. But protection comes in multiple forms. Glass snails are faster moving than many land snail species, and they have the advantage of numbers. It's not uncommon for these invertebrates to gather in groups while they forage. A foraging buddy can quickly turn into a predator's distraction for an escaping glass snail. Still, this isn't enough for every glass snail species. Of the nearly 200 described, some are listed as endangered, largely facing habitat loss and the climate crisis as their main challenges. As cold-loving critters, a warming planet puts pressure on them. Glass snails are largely confined to the northern hemisphere. Here, they often live at high altitudes on snow-capped mountains. Have you ever seen a snail crawling in the snow? Most don't, but glass snails do. They live as far north as the Arctic Circle, although some species tolerate warmer temperatures on oceanic islands. They also take up residence in forests and grasslands, often preferring places with plenty of cover and moisture. Most of the time, they're hidden under the forest floor, but cool air and rain drives them out. Dozens may congregate in a small area, seeking out food and mates. Each individual glass snail has both male and female reproductive organs, so they simply need to find another glass snail of the same species to reproduce. Their eggs, laid in the coldest months of the year, develop through winter, and the baby glass snails will be mature by next autumn to continue on the legacy. So here we have a glass snail that isn't truly a glass snail. Some species don't even qualify as snails at all. It's a snail that prefers cold temperatures and uses that preference to its advantage. Its cold-loving nature, however, also puts it at a disadvantage against a warming global climate. It lives a short, fast life and often gathers in groups, especially in the fall. Next time you're taking a stroll in the frosty woods, keep a lookout for this fascinating invertebrate almost no one knows about. Here's something else you may not know. You can support this channel by checking out the AFF Patreon page, giving a thumbs up, or leaving a comment if you learned something new. Dad, Spike Spiegel 93, and our other channel members love this human-made content. Thank you for watching Animal Fact Files.